It's time to huddle up. I'm Garrett Seawright. This is the Daily Huddle for Sunday, September 10th. Thanks for making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up. It helps get us in front of more college football fans. If you're listening on the podcast, drop a 5-star review. It certainly goes a long way in helping us, and we certainly appreciate it. There's a not fun story to talk about today on this Sunday after a really fun, interesting, wild Saturday of college football, that there were weather delays and upsets and really fun games yesterday. The topic of discussion has to be Michigan State head coach Mel Tucker. And that's one, it's not anything that, I want to talk about on this Sunday, but it has to be. If you haven't seen the story, Mel Tucker is accused of sexual harassment, and it's pretty much the worst accusation of sexual harassment you can have, is that he is accused of sexual misconduct and harassment by Brenda Tracy. And if you're a big college football fan, you likely know who Brenda Tracy is, that she is the rape victim survivor who has been enlisted by college football programs to teach their players about consent and about sexual misconduct and sexual harassment and things like that. She was hired by Michigan State to speak to their team to discuss sexual harassment and sexual misconduct and things like that. So it's not a good situation by any stretch of the imagination. It's rough. It's a bad spot to be in. And really, it's just it's not good at all. It's the worst possible person that you can sexually harass, frankly. And even if it was consensual, and the story is long and wide ranging, but in Mel Tucker's view, it was a consensual encounter in a consensual relationship that, and I don't want to get too far deep into the woods of what he is accused of doing, but essentially he claims that they had consensual phone sex, and she says that is not what had happened at all. So that is where the situation is, and the problem lies, is that the one person that you can't have accuse you of sexual harassment is accusing Mel Tucker of sexual harassment. It's not a long list of people that you can't have an extramarital affair with, but the person you hired to educate your players about how women are more than just pieces of meat and trophies to be won is I think at the top of the list. So for Mel Tucker, it is not a good situation at all. For Michigan State, it's not a good situation at all. There are already members of the media that cover Michigan State that have said Mel Tucker has probably coached his last game at Michigan State. And there's an early kind of cynical view that Michigan State, that these accusations are coming out because Michigan State is trying to get out from under Mel Tucker's contract. And while, yes, it is an atrocious contract, it is bad. He is wildly overpaid, and he signed a new contract at the best possible time for him, under really great terms for him. I think that that's even too cynical for me to get on board with. If Michigan State were 0-2, yes, it would be. I wouldn't be shocked by the idea that hey, like we're looking to get out of this. If he had lost to Central Michigan and Richmond, yes, I think that there's a logical explanation for trying to get out from under that contract. But they're not. Michigan State's 2-0. I would be suspicious of the timing if they were 0-2, but they're not. They're 2-0, and they're going into a really big game against Washington. So this is sort of a worst case scenario for Michigan State. And that's a tough spot to be in because it's just not, it's bad timing. But they do, I think, look somewhat good by taking the accusation seriously. There's so many times that colleges get wrapped up in the, oh my gosh, what will the public think about this if they find out? And then they try to cover stuff up and it just makes it the entire situation worse. And the reality is the public almost always finds out. Almost always does the public find out. So it's always better to tackle this head on. So Michigan State does win some brownie points. On the flip side, the story reveals that the investigation has been going on since March. And that, I think, might be where the questions lie is, okay, so you've known since March that your head football coach has been accused of sexual harassment, and you've been investigating the situation. So you've been investigating the situation. You didn't, place him on administrative leave or anything like that. So it's bad timing that it comes out now going into a big game. But put football aside, how long does an investigation like that last? How long does it take to get to the facts? And is there a possibility to get to the facts? How do you get to the bottom of a he said, she said that satisfies either side of the situation? And I don't know that you can. And that might be the especially difficult part is you just might not ever get to the situation that you want to be in and have the facts that, make you feel really strongly one way or the other. And that's a scary situation to be in, because if you get this wrong and there's a decent chance that you get this wrong, the backlash is strong from both sides. If you get it wrong and there comes out later that Brenda Tracy has a vendetta to grind against Mel Tucker and that this was a consensual relationship and he decided he wasn't going to leave his wife of more than 20 years or whatever the case may be, you look really bad. If you say Mel Tucker did nothing wrong and he's still our head football coach and then more evidence comes out, you look pretty bad. So it's a bad situation in Michigan State. It's bad. And I don't know how to fix it. And I don't know that they know how to fix it. And I don't know that they know what the best path forward is. And that is not a good place to be in for anybody. It's too early for me to be to find the cynical view of, well, they're just trying to get out from that contract. They very well might be. But I think the timing of being 2-0 and going into a big game against a future conference opponent in Washington means that this isn't the reason that isn't the reason for why they're doing what they're doing. On the flip side, Alabama has some quarterback problems. I guess that's a bad transition. We'll end the Mel Tucker discussion there. There will be more to it than that. I wouldn't be surprised if, and I'm having webcam problems, and so I'm all thrown off. So please bear with me. If we get to the end of the week and Mel Tucker is still Michigan State's head football coach, I'll be surprised. And that's not a great run for the Big Ten over the course of the last couple of months in the head coaching department. So we'll see what happens there. But the early consensus is that Mel Tucker has coached his last game as the Michigan State head coach, and I wouldn't be shocked if that was the truth. In other college football news, Alabama doesn't have a quarterback, and it shows. The Crimson Tide essentially played with one arm tied behind their back last night. Jalen Milroe is not the answer. I think Nick Saban knows that. I think everybody on the Alabama coaching staff knows that. Every Crimson Tide fan knows that. And everybody who watched that game last night, I think, goes away from it going, they got to figure something out because that ain't it. And the fact that Jalen Milroe isn't the answer for Alabama should be the really terrifying thing because that's not something you fix mid-season. Jalen Milroe isn't going to get markedly better to the point where their offense doesn't look like it's a high school offense. If he isn't going to get it done, Tyler Buchner isn't much better because if he was, he'd already been playing. So it might just be one of those years where you just got to grind it out, score how you can, when you can, where you can, rely on your defense a little bit. Because that was a tough watch. It was almost the high school offense of like, okay, we'll run the football out of the spread, and then we'll snap it to the quarterback, and he'll run it. And when we want to throw the ball, we'll just have our quarterback throw it as far as he can, and we hope it's either caught or it's pass interference. And you can get by doing that against Middle Tennessee State and USF and other assembled not great opponents on your schedule. Texas is pretty good. Texas defensively might be better than Texas offensively, and their offense is pretty good. So you go up against a pretty good defense with a quarterback who can't throw the ball in any real success in an intermediate fashion. So it's either screens, dink and dunks, backs out of the backfield, or we're just going hashtag chuck the pigskin, and however far it gets is however far it gets, and either our guy catches it or it's a pass interference is the best case scenario. So Alabama's got problems. Alabama has issues at the quarterback spot. And it's weird to me because you had kind of advance notice that this might be an issue going forward, that Jaden Milroe got some playing time last year, and it wasn't great. And you knew Bryce Young was going to go to the NFL, and you did really not a whole lot to fix your situation. So I'm hesitant to say, it's indicative of a Nick Saban failure, but it is somewhat a Nick Saban failure that you knew you had problems at that position and you didn't really address them. And now it has, after 2 weeks, it's come back to bite you. Truth be told, I think Texas won by 10 last night and should have won by 20 at least. I think Alabama is staring down a 9-3 season right now if they don't figure something else out, or if Jalen Milroe doesn't show a really vast improvement. Because their defense is still pretty good. Kool-Aid McKinstry is a man. Kool-Aid McKinstry can play. But on offense, they have major question marks. Major question marks. It's the first time Alabama has lost a non-conference game at home since 2007 to Louisiana Monroe. So in the second time ever under Nick Saban, they lost a non-conference home game. Now, I'm not trying to paint this picture that Alabama is trash. They're not. They still have really good players at really important positions. It's just at the most important position, they might have the fifth or sixth best quarterback in the SEC. And that's a problem, especially for the offense that Tommy Rees wants to run, the way Alabama wants to play, and the reality of at some point you're going to have to put the game on that guy's back and he's got to go win it for you. And I don't know that Jaden Milroe is capable of that. And that should be extra scary. Keeping in this same theme, the SEC sure does not look good after a couple of weeks in the season. In big early season games where an SEC team has been featured as, this is a marquee matchup, South Carolina lost to North Carolina. Alabama lost to Texas. Texas A&M lost to Miami. Florida lost to Utah. LSU lost to Florida State. They've all got losses. Georgia hasn't played anybody. But in the big games, the marquee games, the games that people are like, hell yeah, big time football coming up, the SEC has not performed well. When you're as a conference are hanging your hat on, well, Auburn beat Cal and Mississippi State beat Arizona and Tennessee beat Virginia, you don't have a whole lot to be proud of. So basically, any SEC school that has challenged themselves in the non-conference has seen a loss. Now, I'm not decrying that the SEC is forever down or that they're overhyped or whatever. It's just an observation that through the first 2.5 weeks of the college football season, Vanderbilt holding on to beat Hawaii in a half-built stadium can't be one of the like marquee non-conference wins that you point to as like, yeah, see, we're still getting it done. Well, are you? Because, not great. It's not good. And they'll have other opportunities. It's just through the first 2 weeks of the season where, A&M gets outscored by 16 in the second half, where that score might even be the 48-33 win by Miami over A&M might even be slightly deceiving. It ain't good. At the same time, the Big Ten West stinks. Dog baby. Terrible. Wisconsin lost to Washington State. Iowa barely beat Iowa State. Nebraska's 0-2. And nobody in the division is averaging 25 points per game. Illinois lost on the road at Kansas. Northwestern is a dumpster fire. Purdue beat Virginia Tech after being on again, off again in that game like 5 times in the weather yesterday. It ain't good. The Big Ten East, Michigan and Penn State look like top 5 teams out of the chute. Ohio State looks like it has the potential to maybe be that way at some point. But they've got question marks and haven't performed smashingly. The East is pretty good. The West is horrendous. Bad, bad, bad. There were people hammering that Nebraska-Colorado game yesterday as a 3.5-point spread where the Buffs kicked their tail up and down the field. I don't want to spend too much time on Colorado because we've spent some time on Colorado, and they are much better than anybody imagined that they could have been. But they sure beat the brakes off Nebraska yesterday, and it showed Nebraska is not close to being where they need to be, and I think Matt Rule will do a great job there. But they're a lot farther off than I think anybody thought they were. Speaking of Colorado, it's time for the Sunday Stiff Arm Trophy update. So this is my Heisman ballot. If I had a Heisman ballot and they asked me to vote on it on September 10th. Travis Hunter from Colorado, still at my top slot. I think Travis Hunter will get more publicity and notoriety than Shedeur Sanders just because what he is doing is virtually unheard of. What Shedeur Sanders is doing is having a really good season for a quarterback. And he's playing really well. He should be really proud. And Colorado has a lot to be excited about. But what Travis Hunter is doing is so unique that he's going to get more notoriety, I think, than Shedeur Sanders. In my second place, Michael Penix Jr. continues to play really, really well and is really productive for Washington. Had more than 400 yards passing again yesterday. If he can stay healthy and Washington can remain in the Pac-12 title race, again, I've mentioned it before. I don't think Michael Penix has to be the quarterback of the best team in the quarterback for the best team in the country. to win the Heisman Trophy. If he can be that Lamar Jackson type where you still are like you're like 8-4, but you're so good that it's clear that your team would be nothing without you, I think he's got a great shot to remain in this Heisman Trophy conversation. But as long as Washington can stay in the Pac-12 race, he's going to stay at the forefront of some college football attention. But he's playing really well. I don't buy the first round franchise quarterback hype. But for what he's doing so far, it's really good. And Sam Hartman, I know Notre Dame has still not really been all that tested, but he threw 4 more touchdowns. And I think Notre Dame can be in that same conversation of Washington. There are those that believe that Notre Dame is a college football playoff contender. I don't know that that's the case, but I do think that Sam Hartman will be viewed as the difference maker for why they are markedly improved over last year. And if he just keeps tallying touchdown passes, he's going to stay in that race. So Sam Hartman, we get the number 3 slot on my Heisman ballot in this week's Sunday Stiff Arm Trophy update. That will do it for today's edition of the Daily Huddle on Saturday Glory. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. We certainly appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up. Give us a subscribe. It goes a long way in helping us get in front of more college football fans. If you're listening on the podcast, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in getting us in front of more folks who want to talk about the greatest game. Again, that'll do it for today's edition. I'm Garrett Seawright. We'll catch you tomorrow right here on the Daily Huddle with Saturday Glory.